G'day, Ben from Duck Plain Chicken here with new build series. It's been a little bit since I've done any of the Bandai Mecha Colle Kits from the Yamato series. Both of these kits are from Space Battleship Yamato 2202 and they're the last kits I have from this series. So we're going to be building the Neu Balgray, which is this one here, and we're going to be building the Karakrum-Class combat ship. So without further ado, let's have a look at what's in each of the boxes. Starting with the Neu Balgray, we get water slide decals, which I'll get to in a minute. We get a number of runners, and most of them are in this sort of red colour. Typical affair with these Mecha Colle Kits, you know, fantastic detail, really sharp moulding. You know the deal. You've seen me build enough of these ones. Get this small little runner, and this is for the asymmetrical bit that goes above the command deck. And you can see quite a few pieces in this particular kit. I would say it's probably one of the more complex ones. Of course, I've built similar kits previously. And we do get the typical black stand with the movable part so you can pose the ship in at any angle that you want. Now what I love about this kit is the water slide decals. I might help if I get them up the right way. So the detail on these things is unreal. So there's going to be lots of markings on this ship. It's going to look fantastic. And I've not had any problems with these Bandai decals, so I expect them to go down as smooth as butter. Alright, looking at the inside of the box lid, we of course get the instructions. There's a lot going on there. Usually what I'll do is I'll take the tabs on the box and just pull them apart, and usually I'll flatten it out and it makes it a lot easier to read. We've got the decal callouts on the side. We've also got some paint guides here. And I'll go through the colours that I choose when I get up to the painting. Onto the Karakrum. I should say too that these sprues, they all are individually bagged. I just take them out of the bags before I show you the sprues, you know, to prevent the noise from annoying you, the crinkling plastic. Again, we get a stand. This one's a little bit different, and I suspect because this craft is a bit bigger, so this stand doesn't look as though it's posable like the other one. And this kit is basically all in this green color. Again, lots of surface detail. Now I should say the scale of this ship, this is a massive ship in the anime. I'm sure if you're watching this you have seen the anime, so you know these are really big ships. This looks like the rear sort of engine parts, and then some of the deck by the look of it. This piece goes underneath. Got the bridge, so lots of detail there. This one doesn't have any markings of any kind. It doesn't have any decals or stickers. Alright, so the next thing for me to do is to start cutting pieces off sprues and putting these kits together loosely so I can sort of work out how I can light them, because of course I don't do a Mecha Colle Kit these days without lighting it in some way. I'm going to start with the assembling of the Neu Balgray, but before I do, I want to highlight a quirk of this kit that I didn't notice until I started removing parts from sprues. We get this this sprue here, NB1, and it is specifically for converting a 1/1000 Andromeda kit, or Andromeda class kit, to the Neu Balgray. So you don't actually use any of these parts for this particular kit, but if you have the 1/1000 scale Andromeda, then they give you the instructions here on how to basically convert it. Now, I'm not sure what you would do about the script decals that go on the Neu Balgray. I don't know if they're included in the Andromeda class 1/1000 kit or not, so I'm not sure what happens there. I'd love to know if someone's actually done that, converted that kit. But it does provide those pieces, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, that'll go into my bits box. I don't have the 1/1000 Andromeda kit, so I'm unlikely to sort of build this at that scale, but it's interesting they include that with the Mecha Colle Kit. Alright, now moving on to construction. What I'm going to do is show you what I do when I'm building these kits, sort of like just out of the box and trying to work out how they go together before I start on the lighting side of things. So these kits are snap fit kits, which means they don't need glue. So they're great for just, you know, a weekend sort of project. You want to just snap them together. But I'm going to glue mine, and one thing that, you know, most builders are well aware of is that if you ever sort of building kits and trying to work out where lighting and stuff goes, quite often you're assembling a kit, you're pulling it apart, you're assembling bits, you're pulling it apart. So in order to do that, we need to make it a bit easier to pull these parts apart. And the best way of doing that is by trimming the pegs. So these pegs are quite large, and so what I do is I trim them on an angle, and that reduces the surface area of the pegs, which reduces the friction and makes them a bit easier to pull apart when you need to. Now, all these pegs are really going to do for this build is locate the piece properly. So it's not going to be responsible for holding the pieces together, because I'm going to use glue for that, but it will be used for, you know, how I locate the pieces together. With the start of the build, they get you to put the top and bottom half of the hull together. So you can see that goes together reasonably well. But if I try to pull this apart, it's still a little bit tough in places, but it's a lot easier than if I had the full pegs there. So leave that in place, that works fine. The other thing I should note is that this kit is almost identical to the Andromeda class kits that I sort of built a while ago. There was a set of them. Now this is the Antilles craft, and it's basically the almost identical pieces. The only difference is the gubbins that goes on at the top of the bridge. So I've gone back and actually watched my own videos of how I lit those, and I'm going to do this one differently, so at least it'll be a little bit of a different build. Alright, then we have this end piece, end cap, that slides in, so that's the rear engine. We have this front piece which goes on here, and I think I might trim those pegs too. Now a lot of this I think will end up being ground out anyway to allow for the lighting. Okay, so that's how it goes. This goes on like that. Then we have these side pieces, and so these pegs down the side here, need to trim those as well. And again, if I need to, I'll just glue these pieces in place once I'm sort of ready for final assembly. Okay, right, so this piece goes on here. Oh, got another peg I need to trim. Okay, so that goes in place like that. Yeah, it still amazes me, these kits, how Bandai manages to sort of hide all the seams away. Yeah, it's just credit to Bandai's engineers. Alright, next is the bridge assembly. So we have a number of little pieces here that interlock. Let's see. Alright, so I've got those two pieces slide on like so. Okay, then we've got this back piece which slides in here, and that all sort of slides in pretty easily. What I'll end up doing is gluing these pieces, this sort of assembly all together. Two big block pieces. Now I might trim these pegs just a little bit. Well, I suspect I'll end up gluing this together as well. Alright, so they go together like so. We have these fins. Okay, so they go together like so. And then this interlocks with the front of the bridge. Okay, then we have these side engine pieces which go into the slots here, and then we have these pieces that goes in like so, and we put the bridge on, and this goes. Okay, that all beds down and locks into place nicely. A bit worried about these bits. I don't want to sort of rest it there too long. Okay, next we have these little drop tanks, or whatever they are. I don't think they are drop tanks, it's just what they remind me of. But I think with these things I might just I need to glue them together because there'll be a seam that I have to deal with. But for now I'll just glue it together. Yeah, it's like they've tried to put in a natural panel line there. There we go, and these go on the bottom. Alright, now this fin, I know I need to trim the peg for this one, because these inevitably do cause me grief when I'm trying to get them in place. It's still pretty tight, but anyway. Okay, that fin's in place. We have this piece which goes here. We have these two pieces which join up. Actually, again, I'm going to trim these posts quite substantially. Means it may not hold in place particularly well, you know, during the sort of initial assembly, but it also means that I'll be able to take it apart easy enough. Right, upside down this joint. Alright, so it slots in place like so. Okay, then we have the two halves of the top deck. Okay, and then this somehow slots onto here, like so. Okay, for this top of the bridge part, it's a little bit It's a little bit confusing for me in the instructions just because of the way they're illustrated, but I think this little end piece slots on like so. So it's up on a sort of angle like that. I think that's the right way it goes. And then this is supposed to, I think this is where it's definitely going to need some glue. I thought it would all be snap fit, but I don't think it is, because it's not going to just push into the top here. Oh, now it's all falling apart. If I try to get this in without the detail bit on it, it doesn't appear to sort of push in anywhere. It sort of lines up with the top of the bridge. If I can get that to happen. But it's not going to stay there. So that's going to be interesting, because I'm definitely going to need to glue it in place, but hopefully you can sort of see. Off it comes. So I might have to do a bit more investigation there to find out how I'm going to get that to sort of fit. But I think what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have to paint it separately and then super glue it in place. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it, because it is not going to sit in there and hold in place by itself. It does locate, but yeah, it doesn't sort of bite down into anything. So that's interesting. I will leave that off for now. There is also the guns, which I need to put in place. So again, I will trim these pegs substantially so that they're easy enough to get out again. Okay, obviously you want the lower one in first, and then the upper one. There is this tiny little fin that, again, I'm going to cut the tab so it goes in a bit easier. Tell you what, if I get through this build without breaking one of these little spiky bits that come off the kit, I'm going to be doing really well. Okay, the final part is the stand. So it gives you sort of three slots that you can put the stand into the base. Now it goes forward. And you've got this little ball joint socket, the peg on it. Peg goes underneath here, and then you can angle the ship any way you want. So apart from the detail on the top of the bridge there, that's pretty much it. Okay, time to build up the Karakrum-Class. So the first step is we have this piece that goes underneath. It is actually keyed by the look of it, so it looks like it can only go one way, which is nice. Okay, so that goes in like that, and then we sandwich this one together like so. Now what's concerning me here is, where am I going to put the post for the wires? Let's see, I've got a bit of the aluminium pipe here that I use. Hopefully this fits in between these things. Whoa, not much in it, but that will work. So I think when we get to the stand, it'll be interesting to see how, I mean, obviously it's a different stand to what you normally get with these Mecha Colle kits, but it'll be interesting to see how they've dealt with these pieces that hang on the bottom. Okay, so we have the back part of the deck, which has to go in first. And what I'm going to do is trim these. What I'm going to do is trim the tabs, make it a bit easier for them to go in. Okay, and this goes that way, I suspect. Okay, so that goes in like that. And this one goes over the top. And we have this piece. Now again, we've got slots with tabs. I'm going to trim these tabs down. Now, I don't actually know how much of this I'm going to have to drill out anyway for the lighting. So those two together. Got pegs on the bottom here. Trim those. And we have this tall, almost looks like a pagoda. Alright, I'm not sure if this will come out on camera, but you can see daylight through there. It's just those two pieces are not coming together properly. So anyway, I'm going to have to, I think I'll end up gluing those pieces anyway, but I might have to do a bit more investigation as to why they're not butting up properly. Okay, and this goes, again, I might trim these pegs. Okay, so that goes on like so. And we have this little tiny piece here. It slots in here like so. What else do we have? I don't know why you wouldn't put that on before the bridge part. Let's take that off. It goes there. It goes back in there, that's better. And then this piece goes on the back somewhere. This piece goes on the top here, like so. And then we have this big top piece that goes on. Okay, that's going to hold it all together. Alright. Okay, that is a fancy bridge. Alright, now do we put this on? Nope, not yet. Okay, what do we got? This piece and this piece. Alright, again, got some pegs. Trim them down. Okay, it goes together like so. Alright, and we take this piece. This slots in. That looks nicely. Then we have this piece, this piece. So the rear end of this craft is quite fancy. It's got lots of things going on. That goes in there. Okay, we have these little wing pieces that go on the sides. So that's that little sub-assembly, and that should plug on to the end of this. Here we go. Well, that's some fancy fancy rear end happening there. And then we've got this tiny little piece that goes on the end. This is keyed So it needs to go a particular way. And based on that, that is going to be a bit of a nightmare to light up looking at it. I think it's only got the one engine that I'm going to light, but yeah, that's going to be a doozy. It's going to go all the way through all that stuff. Now, okay, then which way does it go? Goes that way. Tell you what, this is quite hefty for a Mecha Colle Kit. It's quite, I think probably the largest one I've built. Just on size alone. Alright, so we have this front end bit. Again, snip those pegs. Snip those pegs. Okay, that slides on like so. And that goes on the front here. Okay. Oops, is that round? Yep, that's around the right way. We have these which come in sort of two halves. So they just pop together like that. I will end up gluing them just to deal with the seams, I think. Okay, and they go on each side. Definitely need to trim that one down because that ain't going to come out again, is it? I reckon once this goes in, I'm not going to get it out ever again. Alright, I don't think I'm going to... You can sort of see how it's sitting there. I'm not going to push it in all the way just yet. I think that one's going to be a real doozy to get out again, just because of those fins on it. So this spoiler, or whatever it is, rear spoiler, goes on the back. We have these that go on the ends. So I should just say, when you're removing parts from sprues, these hull halves, they've got these little tabs on the end of the wings. You do not want to cut them off, because they're needed to put these little things on. Okay, now we should be able to put the bridge in place. Yeah, it's a big ship. Big ship. Okay, now we've got the stand. The stand is different from the other one we put together. So it goes this way, and then we've got this. It's like a cradle by the look of it, and it is supposed to sort of slide in. Yeah, that's quite clever, that. So yeah, it slides in and actually holds it really well. So that is a really cool stand that they've provided. Works really well, but of course I won't be using it. Alright, so that's the Karakrum-Class. So now the next step for me is to start taking things apart again and just working out the lighting that I'm going to do. So I've just started work on the Karakrum-Class lighting, and for this bit, which is the base of the engine, it sort of goes into the main hull like that. I'm going to drill a fairly large hole through this. It's actually sort of, it's all been glued together. I'm just waiting for it to dry. I've just used my knife to sort of find the center hole ready for drilling it, but I'll probably end up using a reasonable size drill. It is pretty much solid plastic all the way through here, so it's going to be, you know, just using a pin vise to carefully sort of drill through. That one, pretty straightforward, I think. Then we have the next bit of it. I've already drilled a hole, you can see all the way through there. That's a 2mm drill bit. I'm also waiting for this one to dry as well. I started drilling it before it properly dried, and you know, there was sort of half melted plastic coming out, so that's why I haven't done the other one yet. but there is a hole through there. So of course, once this meets up with the other half, I can have the hole go all the way through this section to get a wire through. The engine nozzle itself is fiddly, to say the least. I'm going to try and hold this up and try and show you what's going on. You can sort of see my hand through it. Now that black bit in the middle, you see, that's the cone. Okay, so I'm going to dissect it and show you what's actually happening here. Try to be careful not to ping these things across the room. So it's actually made up of a number of components. I'm very conscious of this thing flying across the room, as it has already done once. So the nozzle itself, if you remember when I was sort of initially putting it together, it had a cone in the middle. So what I did was I went in through the back, there's a peg on it that I cut off, and then I went in with a rounded grinding bit, and just using my Proxxon went in there nice and slow, just slowly winding through, and then eventually what happens is the plastic gets so thin around the actual cone that it pops out, and I can actually use that. Now for previous builds, I've sort of tried that trick, and I've had the cone completely sort of destroyed, and I've had to sort of work out something else. So I'm kind of glad this one worked. Now the other component is the diffuser. So this is serves two purposes, if I can grab it. See that there? So first of all, it's something to stick the cone to, and the other thing is, of course, it diffuses the light that's coming from behind it. So I should get a nice even light around the cone itself. Now this is a bit of clear plastic. Now this isn't even styrene. I think this came from some packaging or something like that. I just went in there with a sander, just sanding stick, just sanding it down. And you can see I've cut out a couple of holes here because I wasn't really sure what size hole I needed. Turns out 3.5 millimeters is what I needed, and of course I didn't have a hole punch that was 3.5 millimeters. Now I use one of these things, which is a leather punch, and the good thing about these is you can get sort of various, there's various diameter circles that you can cut with it. Now the one that I ended up cutting was 4mm, and then I had to sort of sand it down. So this gets glued in place in the nozzle, okay, and then the cone gets glued onto that, and so that should give me the light diffusion that I need for the engine. So yeah, I think as far as the rest of the fuselage goes, I think there's plenty of room. What I'm going to do is I would like to actually glue the fuselage together, and of course at the moment the only way to there's no way to sort of get in there and route the wires. So what I might end up doing is cutting away some of these areas in here. I need to kind of work out where the middle of this thing is. Okay, all up it's about 17 centimeters. So if we go sort of around 8.5, that puts us in that gap there. So in between these two, that's where I'm going to drill my hole. It's going to get very close, I think, but that's sort of where I'll drill a hole for the post, so it'll sit fairly centered, I think. So yeah, I need to make sure that I've sort of cut away the area up here above that. Alright, so time to get busy with the grinding tool. Okay, so I've done some grinding in the hole, and just to show you how that sort of looks, you can see there is now a clear path for the wire to come out the back and go down into that 3mm hole I've drilled, which turned out to be a lot more of a drama than I thought, just because the plastic's a little bit thin there, and it's sort of right on a ridge, so it was a little bit problematic. And the other sort of thing that I've realized is, of course, that these bottom parts, being that they're all on one brace, are sort of in the way. So I think what I might do is glue these in place and then sort of cut them on either side, so sort of along here and here, and so that way, because I'll need to be able to set the post in place using 2-part epoxy, and I really need to sort of cut this in order to be able to do that. So I'll get them glued in place. Now, while I've got the extra thin out, I'm going to some of these areas where I've used the grinding tool, they're pretty rough, and so while I'm sort of pulling wires through, I want to make it a little bit smoother, so I'm just going to run some extra thin over the top of it just to tidy it up a little bit, make it a little less jagged. Okay, this lower piece has had some time to dry, and what I'd like to do is cut this little section in here so that the steel tube is sort of reinforced when I glue it in place, so something like that. So what I need to do is get my little razor saw and carefully try to cut this in line with the I don't know if the razor saw is actually going to be the best bet. Maybe I might be better off with the Proxon. Okay, so what I want to be able to do, you can see that hole through there now. I want to be able to glue the two halves together and then be able to get this post up here, and then I can sort of secure it in place in the top there using some 2-part epoxy putty. So I just need to make sure that it's sort of perpendicular, level, all that sort of thing. And then I can secure it in place and I'll be able to run the wires down through it, no worries. So there are a couple of, there's probably a little bit more I have to grind out just sort of in here somewhere. But I reckon that's going to be the solution. I think that's going to work for me. This one is going to be a lot easier just because it's only the one light source, or the one light I should say. So of course I've drilled this out, this end bit, with a 2mm drill bit, and I'm just going to up it a little bit with a 2.5mm drill bit. So I'm just going to hollow this one out a little bit more. Clean run through that one. And now I need to do the same for this one. I think this one's going to be a little bit trickier just because there's a little bit more plastic in there. Alright. After a bit of work with the grinding tool, managed to get the hole all the way through that one. So now, when I join these up, hopefully we can see daylight all the way through. So there we go. So onto the Neu Balgray, and given that I've done the Andromeda classes before, I've got a pretty good idea of how I need to set these up. But what I do want to do is I want to use addressable LEDs, addressable RGB LEDs, so I can actually get a little bit of life into the the engines and the weapon at the front. So the plan is, if I take these bits off, I've got lots of grinding to do, which I'll do off camera, but essentially we will have 2 holes at the front. They'll be drilled all the way through, and so they will be fiber optics that I'll end up feeding sort of through there, and there'll probably be 1 LED mounted sort of somewhere in here. Then for the back, there's this rear engine piece, which basically I need to remove all this material in here so that I end up with a hole through here that I can mount the or that I can set up an LED for. Now this one has the cone in the middle there, so I will be removing that and trying to retain it so I can drill out the rest of it. It'll be a similar setup to what I've done with the Karakrum-Class. So I'm going to do that. And then what worries me the most is probably these bits here, because I know that they're quite fiddly. So it'd be fine if it was just the one engine on the back, but it's not. We've got a couple of them. So we've got these sort of on both sides. What I'll do is I will drill holes through them, and again this will be done with hopefully with fiber optics. I'm really hoping. When I did the Andromeda class, I think each one had 7 individual LEDs in it, and I don't really want to go down that path again. I want to sort of try and set it up with some fiber optics instead. So not sure how that's going to go. Haven't got sort of a huge amount of room in here, but I will be drilling out a lot of this plastic. I've started some work on the Neu Balgray, and I'll show you what I've done so far. So the most obvious change is going to be at the back here. Now, previously when I did the Andromeda classes, I did something a little bit different here, where I sort of made a clip that the rear cone sort of clipped into. This one I'm doing a little bit differently. I've got some styrene tube here, and of course I have drilled out the cone and everything on the rear nozzle, but this now sort of sits in place and actually is quite snug there, and you can see the edge of the styrene tube there. So what I'll do is I'll take a bit of clear styrene, scuff it up a little bit to diffuse it, and just stick that on the end there. Now what I'm aiming for is to see if I can get all the LEDs in place before I stick the top of the hull on. The amount of drama I went through with the previous Andromeda kits I went through, it was just a bit of a nightmare. So I want to try and get all the LEDs in place on this bottom piece of the hull, all wired up, sort of ready to go, to make it a bit easier. Alright, so that's the rear, and what I'll end up doing is I'll end up having an LED sort of back in the back of the styrene tube there. And then probably one of the hardest bits is where I've got the 4 sort of auxiliary engines. If I put this back together, so there is this piece that sort of sits in here somewhere, and then this piece that goes over the top. Okay, so there's going to be 4 of these. Now what I've done here is I have trimmed everything down quite substantially. Alright, so there was sort of a lot more plastic around this, and I've also drilled some 1mm holes. Now I'll be using 1mm fibre optic here. So if I just get these in place. Okay, so the idea will be to have the fibre optics feed in, and you can sort of see the end of one there, so I'll have an LED in there for these 4 smaller ones. So I've trimmed a lot of plastic on that. and also on this piece, just to allow for the fibre optics. If we compare these two, I haven't sort of worked on this one yet, but you can see how much I've sort of ripped out of it. So that way, hopefully it sits in place. And something like that. Now, we'll have to glue it, but that's all right if I can sort of get it in place. So there'll be those, and of course there'll be two on the other side. Now at the front, the wave motion cannons at the front, I have ground out a whole lot of plastic in here, and I have some 2mm fibre optics, so I've drilled some 2mm holes in here, and the idea is, so if I feed this one through, again I'll be able to sort of set up an LED in here somewhere before I sort of stick all this together. Alright, I've just used some black primer. Just do a little bit of interior light blocking here. And so certainly the tube on the end here, I wanted to make sure that that was black so there was no light leaking. And I've done a bit of work off camera for the lighting side of things. So I'm going to sort of show you, I'm going to be using one of these, they're called Arduino by Zhao. So it's Arduino with a triple E. And these are tiny little Arduino boards, great for this sort of stuff where you want, you know, your lights to do something, or if you've got motors or whatever. So I've used these in the past. They're nice and small, they're great. They use the Arduino IDE for coding. And what I'm using is addressable RGB LEDs, and I've got 3 of them. I'll go through it in a little bit more detail in a minute, but I just want to quickly show you what's happening here. So if I plug these in, and I haven't programmed these lights properly yet, they will just sort of start working kind of randomly, but you can see how they change colour. They change colour at different times, they're sort of pulsing, and this one on the left should start up in a minute. There we go. So they're all going now, they're all pulsing different colours at different sort of intervals. So I will quickly take you through what sort of RGB LEDs they are. Get one out of the pack, and these are tiny. Let's see if I can get one on the end of my finger without falling off. Alright, so you can see how small that is, but basically it's a little rectangular LED, and it's got 4 little legs on it. And you might be able to see on the bottom left there, there's sort of a cutout which indicates which pin is the ground. So these are tiny, but I find these about as small as I can get to be able to sort of solder them by hand. And so what I'll do is I'll take these little legs and I'll actually just bend them down, and then I'll put them in sort of a helping hands, and I can sort of solder onto those pins reasonably easily. I'm just using magnet wire, so really thin wire. And the way these work is, if I get my crappy little diagram out here, here's the little cutout I was talking about. So this is the ground pin, and then you have your voltage pin, your positive. So they're sort of diametrically opposite. And then you have an in and out, and this is for your data. So this is basically what tells the LED what color it needs to be and when it needs to pulse a particular color, or whatever commands you send it. So for example, from the Arduino board, you would have a line going from one of the pins on the Arduino board to digital in, and then from the digital out to the digital in of the next RGB LED in the chain. So that's kind of how it works. And the ones I'm using are SK6812s, and they're called reverse mount SMD LEDs. So they're the ones I'm using, and they come in these little pick and place sort of belts. Okay, so I have 3 of them. Now, the way I'm going to do this is going to sort of sit something like that. So the one up the end here, this is going to be for the main engine. So I'm going to basically, using UV resin, I'm going to glue that in place at the end of that sort of light pipe there. The next one across, so the middle one here, is going to be for the 4 smaller engines that are at this side. I thought it'd be nice to be able to animate them independently, because you know those small engines, they tend to sort of work at different times to the main one. So this one will sort of face in that direction, and then I'll have 4 1mm fibre optics going to the 4 rear engines. And then this one up the front will be for the wave motion cannon, and so this will sort of sit somewhere like that. And then again, I'll have some fibre optics going to the front of the weapon. I'm going to glue in the LED for the end of the Karakrum-Class, and so what I'm going to try and do is get some UV resin sort of in there to hold it in place. For this I'm using 0603 warm white LEDs, and these are pre-wired. Okay, I think the easiest way for me to do this is to actually dunk the LED in the resin, get plenty on there, and hit it with the UV torch to set it in place. Yeah, I think that's bright enough by the time we get the diffuser and the end cap on that. So I'm pretty happy with that, I think. All right, so that's, and the way this is going to work is, it's going to go in here, like so. And then of course the wires are going to go out where the post is. And for this one, it's pretty simple, there's not a lot in it. I'll wire in a resistor, you know, just in the base, but that's really about all the lighting I'm going to do on this one. Okay, I've got the RGB LED stuck in place on the end of that tube there using UV resin. I've tested it, works pretty well. There will be a bit of light blocking required. Now for the smaller engines, I need a little bit of tube that I can attach the fibre optics to. So, I don't know, I think that one might be a bit too big. Let's go with a smaller tube. Okay, so we're just taping them all together so all the ends are at the same kind of point, and then we will get them in here somehow. I might have to try and pour the resin down in there while I've got the fibre optics sort of lined up like that, and quickly hit it with the UV torch. Alright, so I think what I'm going to need to do is get this sort of glued in place. Work out where these are going to go. Okay, so what I've done here is I've set everything in 2-part epoxy resin. So it's all in there pretty solid. It's good, it's all in the one half of the hull now. And so the next step is to do a lot of light blocking. There will be gaps, you know, between pieces in different places, so I do want to make sure I sort of cover all this light area, and make sure we sort of deal with that light bleed if it occurs. So for the light blocking, I'm just going to use some tulip fabric paint. It's nice and thick, and of course it's black in colour. Now I've got this plugged in, and I'm going to use this stuff while it's plugged in so I can see exactly where light is sort of leaking, because it'll basically travel anywhere the clear epoxy you know, catches the light. Alright, so you get sort of an idea there. And the problem is I've got it's set to a sequence. I've got to wait for the lights to actually turn on to see whether the there's any light leaks or not. So I'm just finishing up some bits and pieces ready for painting. So these tanks come in 2 halves. Just glued them together. You know, bits of the bridge. So these are just all in the process of drying, and then I can give them a bit of a sand where I need to, just on some of those seams. Now I've done a couple of other things sort of off camera, and one thing I've done is glued the top and bottom of the Neu Balgray, and so the reason for that is because there's going to be seams along the edges here. Not very many of them, it's just sort of at the front and a little bit at the back that I wanted to sort of clean up. There's a little bit of an edge there, but you can sort of see how it's all, you know, we've got the fibre optics all sort of hanging out everywhere. And look, you know, the good thing about the fibre optics is I can sort of paint all this and then cut them back. We've got the rear engine here. Now what I'll do is I'll probably just stick a bit of tape over that to sort of mask that off, ready for painting. Now the Karakrum-Class, I've had to, my original idea of just having the post sort of going up through the middle there wasn't quite working. I wanted to be able to seal the 2 halves of the hull together before you know, putting in the post, but the problem was I couldn't get the post exactly in the right sort of position once the hull was all together. So what I've done is, you can probably see there's a little bit of aluminium pipe there, and I've set that in place with some 2-part epoxy putty, and now I can take a smaller diameter rod and get that in, and it will sort of sit in there and it'll slide in there. Now I've used a little bit, you can see that it's not sort of poking all the way through. That's because there's a little bit of epoxy there, a little bit of putty stopping it from going all the way through. And it just means at the moment it's a bit loose, but that doesn't worry me, because what I'll do is when I'm ready to get the tube in place, I'll actually get a bit of super glue down in there, and then when I put this thing in, I'll let it dry, it'll be nice and stable. But at least it's, you know, it's vertical, it's all straight, so I'm kind of happy with that. And that means now I can put these 2 halves together and I can actually glue them. And again, the seams are pretty minimal. Like there's just sort of a little bit at the front, there's you know, a little bit in between these pieces in the bottom here, but really it's not actually too bad. So I don't think I worry about any sort of sanding or anything in there, but I did just want to get it sort of all glued together. But now you can see there's a nice clear run between the back and the tube where the wires will go. So I'm going to leave this video here, and until the next video, I'll catch you later.